Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And this week we are tackling the word trust and respect. Sorry, respect slash honor. Forgive me in that one. There's the lessons what I'm in, and it was actually related in the topics that I was studying, because today I said that I was going to delve in a little bit deeper into the subject of respect and honor. Yesterday, I gave you my first impressions. Hello, Andrew. Maybe an Andrew might have something to say in the respect of respect and honor, because Andrew is somebody that I respect very much. And if you've never popped into one of my lives on a Sunday night, Andrew is one of my main moderators over there. And when I get stuck on the little details that need to be specific, right, Andrew is usually the one that's kind enough to jump in and help me out in those little crises, those things that we think as crises. But yesterday, we have my list of words here, right? And I'm all pumped. I have some words that I want to tackle. I have some words that I have some stories and some experiences with. I would like to direct this. And it's really silly of me to think that way, because in this process of my own growth in the past few years, I've come to realize that the lessons that have come into my life have come in at the most opportune time, right? And it wasn't by my choice, in all honesty, because some of the lessons that we get, because, well, sometimes we don't want to accept things the way they truly are, right? And when you're doing this kind of work, that's part of the struggle, that's part of the pain, it's part of the disappointment, it's part of the heartbreak and the grief of letting that stuff go, right? And when we were talking about change and choices last week and the week before, in this idea that I wanted to direct how I wanted to pick the next word, right? Because I would have picked forgiveness, in all truth. I thought that was the one word that just set it in with me, that helped me on this path to get better and to realize where I made some of my mistakes. And we took that highlighter, right? Or my finger, and we went like this, and we said, okay, we're going to get one of those big words, right? One of those big, munchy, delicious words that I get to, right? Maybe show the lessons that I've taken in. Maybe represent some of that great thought leadership of where I picked up and resonated with these lessons, because I pick up these lessons from all over the world, from all walks of life, from all different kinds. And I truly believe in this process of our evolution, right? In this process of movement forward, there is a sense of amalgamation, of assimilation. There does, right? There seems that way, when you get your DNA test, right? And you get all those different nationalities, you go, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Wow, we lose it, right? Epigenetically, it's still in our systems. But that recognition that we failed in documenting properly our history, our actual historical uh, landmarks that we have in our systems. Is that the word I'm looking for? It's not. Pinpoint those spots, those traits that are there about us, but we have no idea where they picked up. They seem so foreign. They go against our grades. They're things that we just don't want to do, right? And yet they're there and we're compelled. it comes from something. It comes from within us, right? Okay, so let's draw ourselves back because Cindy's going down a branch there, right? And I like to do that because it ties into the conversations. And sometimes, we treat the symptoms and things, and we don't treat the actual cause that will help us to alleviate some of those really heavy sometimes things that we use to help cope in our lives, right? And that's what I talk about, those symptoms, those things that we do, those things that we live by, right? That just seem foreign to us, but if we didn't have them in our lives, how would we cope, right? And I have been peeling off some of those, like, oh my goodness, and I found a lot of the time that I could want it as much as I want, right? I could strive. It's like that diet. You'll always fail. And that was the case with me. I have been on diet since maybe 10 or 11 years old, consistently, because epigenetically obesity runs in my family. I actually got myself up to 311 pounds, right? That's how I coped with my life. And I'm going to stop here and I'm going to say grateful. It is an addiction. Food is an addiction. Those bad eating habits and the way I coped with my pain and my struggles, that was not good. But I look at the other ways that I could have coped with my addictions, and I did in some of those cases. I'm grateful that I was able to peel those things off, but I think not by my own doing. I think those lessons are there as lessons to have that experience, so possibly we could help others who are having those same experiences, right? That's true, Melvin. Otherwise, we starve to death if we don't eat. And it is one of those addictions that you just can't quit. It's not like quitting alcohol and going cold turkey, right? You might lose part of those joys that alcohol brought into your life because it brought something into your life to make you want the alcohol. I'm just using that as an example, right? But I chose food. I chose food. And it's been an addiction with me, right? Again, since probably very, very, very young in my age, because of those parental fears, that family history, that epigenetics in the genes, right? And it is in the genes, guaranteed. I have a cat who hardly eats anything, and she is a monster. she's a she's sweet, but she's huge, right? And she doesn't eat lots, but she doesn't exercise. That's the thing. It's in our environment, right? Maybe I wouldn't have gotten to 311 pounds if I was more active, but I was a very active child. I was a very active teenager. I'm a very active baby boomer, in fact, right? I'm 1 year short of a baby boomer, but I call myself a baby boomer, right? But I was out all day yesterday. I was out on my bike for hours and I did all my chores. I went and got a new bank card. I went and visited my sister, right? And then I came home, dropped off the bike, and then I hopped on a bus and I rode a bus all the way to work, right? Dropped off the dressing room keys because I accidentally took the dressing room keys home with me. And then I started and I walked halfway. I walked halfway home. It was like, oh my goodness, it was 8 o'clock maybe at night by the time I finally got home. I was so proud of myself of getting my explore video up that I just like was depleted and I needed that mother nature. And I woke up this morning feeling great and I started doing my chores, but I was in my contemplation on this topic, and let's draw it back to the topic because I can get drawn into the conversations. And that's what it is. We all are addicted. We all have handicaps in our lives. And some of those handicaps are physical, and some of those handicaps are emotional or mental, right? And the thing is, I have to be grateful because, oh my goodness, I look at some of those addictions out at the world and I think, how do people do that? Right? Right? How do people do that? At least with the food addiction, I can sit at my computer and I can, right? I can pile back the cookies or the potato chips, right? And not lose my train of thought or my train of absorbing a lesson. But I follow some people, right, because of my own close call with homelessness, right? Very close call, right? I don't know how long it would have lasted. It would have been so painful. I would have jumped out of it immediately. But I was in 24, 48 hours of not having a home, right? And so I appreciate the struggles of the people. And I find it very curious because of this idea of making choices. And I look at these people who've made choices and I wonder about it, right? Why is there no possibility for them to make a different choice? It's because, right? They're not present. They're right. In my addiction of food, I'm able to sit here with you, right? I'm able to absorb a lesson, right? But somebody in that state who's stooped over with their face to the pavement and so lost for themselves, there is no possibility for themselves. How do you even get close to that except wishing and offering some compassion? That's a toughie. So I'm going to throw some gratefulness out there right now for my addiction to food and my gratefulness to those addictions, like my gambling addiction, that I was able to peel away with my new addiction, my healthy addiction of the creation of this brand here, right? Because that's what helped to draw me away from that addiction. I didn't want to spend the money that I could use in camera gear or a new laptop or a new editing program that I didn't want to put that money into a VLT because it was taking my time away from being on the road. I wore this dress specifically for the sunflowers because I'm drawing myself back again to the topic of respect and honor. And that's my procrastination, you guys. I recognize that in this exact moment. It's my procrastinating of not wanting to get into the subject of respect and honor. Because I said yesterday it was my first perspective, and we talked a little bit about honoring ourselves, didn't we? Yesterday, because I had to present the first thought because I didn't know what that word was going to be. I was hoping it was going to be something munchy like forgiveness. And there's lots of them. Like just to read a few, right? There's learning, gentleness, risk, experience, happiness, commitment, understanding, forgiveness, balance, integrity, grace, inspiration, acceptance, goals, patience, companionship, effort, community. Oh, there's so many. And then there's respect and honor. And it got the honor of the third word and the actual first word that I didn't get to pick because I got to pick the first two: choice, right? And change. And I wanted one of those gooders. Gave you my first impression, right? About honoring ourselves and respecting ourselves. And as highly sensitives, we don't do that enough. We don't take care of ourselves. We don't reward ourselves, right? We don't think highly of ourselves, right? We don't give ourselves credit. We don't recognize the great, beautiful light that we bring to this world, right? I got respect and honor. Okay. I gave you my first impressions yesterday. I got up this morning and going into reflection of this topic, and then I was going to take in some lessons. I didn't even get to the lessons, you guys. I didn't even get to a YouTube video on this topic because respect and honor, oh my goodness, in taking my finger and not knowing what the subject could possibly be that we were going to go into next, I couldn't have picked a better word, a more important word. And if you're hanging out with me, right, a very impactful word, respect and honor. And I think Andrew and Malvin might know a little bit about this because I talked a little bit. We've talked a little bit about this, right? Of this honor thy mother and father. That's what first came in to my mind, right? Part of the root of a lot of my problems as a mature adult still clinging to me. I think today, in this day and age that we live in, and the lack of proper parenthood, unfortunately, that lack of etiquette, that lack of making good choices, or not even having the ability to make choices, because quite often we are under the thumb of others, especially in our guardianship in our first few years, right? And they say up to 7, but I'm going to give it up to I'm going to give it, even right now we're absorbing, but we lose that ability to absorb as fast as we do when we are babies, right? That's growing season. That's determining, right, our whole life in those that first decade there. And that's where we want to do the learning, but we continue to learn in each life. But it's just like those baby steps that I was talking about, maybe that minuscule bit of information that we can carry with us that might help us along the way, right? But we're still learning. We're just not learning as fast. And even though I didn't wake up to any of these ideas until I was 57 years old, I do believe, in crying for help as a child and drawing myself back to this word, respect and honor. I didn't have that respect and honor. My mom dragged us from one church to another. She was a Christian. What denomination? Who's to say? We joined every single church that you could possibly think of, from Jehovah Witness to evangelical to, right. My dad was the Scientology, the Stoic, right, the law of attraction. Very much a realist, right? Very forward thinking, my father. But in my household, I guess they had a discussion. They decided that we were going to decide for ourselves, and I never picked out a religion. But then again, when I just started talking about this idea of crying out for help, crying out to God, save me, make this end, make this stop, right? And having to endure that experience, right? But at the same time, being taught in the church, right, to respect thy mother and father. And it twisted me that young age, because I could clearly see what my mother was doing, the wrong in what she was doing, right? And for those of you who don't know, I come from a very dynamic family, and I'm not putting blame anywhere. As I do believe it's an evolutionary process, and I do believe that everybody does the best that they can with what they have in the moment, right? My mother probably just did not have those tools. But ignorance is not an excuse, right? And I recognize that for myself. And that's what I'm doing right now, in a little bit of course correcting and a little bit of getting it out there with a little bit of information, so that in that creation of the best human being we possibly can, that we could do better by ourselves. Isn't that what we want for our children? Is to do a little bit better by ourselves? Yeah, so that did me a little bit of loop. And I think and I suspect, right, that the children in this day and age that we're living in, that these kids are suffering these same ideas, right? They don't understand, right? When I cried out for God, God was enduring with me. God was with me then. I wouldn't have recognized what my mother was doing if there wasn't something else with me at the time, right? Didn't recognize that. In fact, I probably didn't even recognize that until this morning, until I delved into that topic. So it kind of hits for me in the moment, right? It kind of hits for me in the moment, right? Forgiveness does tie into it because I wasn't able to make much movement without that ability to forgive. And I think this idea that I have about evolution, it sits very well, right? Because there were great things about my mother. She had great talents, right? And, God forbid that you actually tried to hurt one of her cubs, she would come at you, right? She was coming at us all the time. And I think, right? It was meant to be. That was the lesson in the moment we don't have. I picked this word, respect and honor. It was number one in one of the of 61 words that I have. Only 54 are going to make it. And this was number one that I didn't get to choose. I got to choose choice and change. Respect and honor. And I have to take a look at that, right? To say, that was the beginning of the mix up, right? To be able to see, to experience, to see the evidence for my own with my own eyes, understanding that that which is greater than me endured with me in that moment in order to give me that ability to recognize the difference between right and wrong. And I made a judgment in that, and it was a wrong judgment, right? That definitely required forgiveness, and I'm grateful that I was able to find that to an extent, right? But ignorance is no excuse. You have these children, you are responsible for their upbringing, right? And in those first few years, we are dependent on our guardianship, aren't we? And I'm going to stop and say grateful for that guardianship, because lots of children grow up and don't have that guardianship, that live their lives within the system, or even worse, they live their lives, right? Scrambling, adapting to conquer, right? Respect and honor was a little bit of a mix up for me because, I was taught to honor thy mother and father. I loved my father, right? But at the same time of loving my father was woke. I didn't recognize it because, I wasn't woke myself at that time, but putting myself in those shoes as the child that I was, knowing how my father was, right? Bringing his family up, right? Ultimately, because he was the king of the castle, that's on my father, right? That misstep of my mother, there could have been something done about that, right? But energy is energy, whether it's regular energy, right? Good energy or bad energy, light energy or dark energy, however you wanna look at it, right? That experience, that energy is there. And if my dad wasn't around, all that energy would be utilized. I recognized it. Not then, but putting myself back in my shoes, right back there in my dynamic family, but recognizing I'm looking at the situation, I'm looking at the story, and I'm putting the pieces together through the eyes of a child that I was, right? And it takes some compassion, reason being the sunflowers, right? Because it's a heavy topic today, right? I chose to do this. And me pussyfooting and procrastinating and just getting into the meat of it, not in a victimhood kind of way, because again, that forgiveness and that understanding, right? It's in our evolution, and those are just missing lessons that they had. My dad was everything to me. He was the brightest light in the darkness, in his own darkness, right? And in the darkness that enveloped his family. But he didn't have a lot of choice in that, because a lot of that was already in the system, right? It was already in the system, and it was only in how he was going to cope with that, right? Because eventually, right, that static will dissipate over time, and whether it takes lifetimes or hours, right? Few lessons, few years, none of us know, because that lesson will come to us in the most opportune time. Opportune. And I recognize that evidence in my own life, and that's true. And I recognize this in this one statement, this one word that got to be the first word. It wasn't the word I wanted. I wanted a big word. I wanted a word that I could chew in and digest and present and go, oh my goodness, right? But sometimes it's in the recognition of what happened, right? Sometimes it's that recognition of, I thought I was all by myself, but you know what? I wasn't. I wasn't by myself. Like, all of me was enduring that. And if all of me wasn't enduring that, right? Maybe I might not have made it to where I'm sitting right now, having these types of conversations, and in my own hesitancy, recognizing I'm dancing around the subjects, right? But this is in the practicing the craft. That's getting comfortable in your own skin. That's the confidence in the information that needs to be delivered. That's the recognition that those gifts that sometimes you don't want to part with, that have been with you for so long, truly don't belong with you, right? They belong to others. And I have to connect with this world so that I'm able to pass those packages along, just like Santa Claus, right? A package for everybody, everybody, right? But today's the day that I'm not delivering any packages. I'm not even going to leave the building, I don't think. No, I don't think I'm even going to leave the building, right? We're just going to leave it for me, right? I'm going to respect myself today, honor myself, right? Because, right, and congratulate myself, right? Because I got it this morning. And what a great first word to start with, because we have to recognize where that pain comes from, because there's no point in working on the symptoms, right? It's like that idea just came to my head, uh, that word sorry wasn't really used very much in my household, but I used it lots. I love that word, apologizing, because it shows that you recognize that maybe you overstepped somebody's boundaries, or even your own boundaries, right? It recognizes the lessons, it recognizes somebody's feelings, right? It recognizes the potential of how it could work out, right? In that etiquette of apologizing, which is a gift in itself. And I did that all the time, but not coming from a household that apologized very, very much, right? And for the most part, I would have to say it was very hard to recognize that I had any value at all, because when things were done, right, it was just the everyday, day to day, and there was no explanation, right? And I was expected to digest it, and I'm grateful, right, that I can make that choice myself now, right? People can talk to me, right, in friendly persuasion, manipulation, however they want. But it's up to me, right? When I say up to me, it's up to all of me to feel, right, if something's true or not true, and whether it's for me or if it's for everybody, because it does take all kinds to make the world. And what is needed in one person is going to be a little bit detrimental in another, right? And I have to keep that in mind too in honoring myself because I recognize some of the things that worked for my mother and worked for my father. And because I am a combination of those two, I should take a serious look and see if any of their ideas, because guaranteed they made movement also, right? They made movement also. They had lessons that I didn't have, right? Just like they didn't have lessons that I had. And sometimes that's why we rub each other this way. Maybe this is why I put in that little bit of extra when it comes to, right, my blood, right? Understanding that we all have limitations and we're all lacking and we're all abundant in different ways. And the better that we can get along with ourselves, we can better get along with other people. Once we get to that point, oh my goodness, the gift exchanging is amazing, right? And I've been there and I've done that. Whether I appreciated it in the moment or not, I appreciate it now because I'm willing to go back there and put myself in those shoes, right? Yeah, of somebody else's way of thinking of a situation. Okay, let's see what we got going on here. Yeah, and that's we're brought up that way, Andrew. Especially the little boys, they're all taught to be tough and manly. And sometimes I think, why is it that these partnerships with men and women in that collaboration of bringing up the children, why is it so broken? Because it's obvious that children are missing a lot of lessons. And, it's unfortunate, but the school system is going to have to pick that up. And you're going to see mindset in the school systems, guaranteed. They call it something else. They call it an addictions modem. That's what they call it. But it's necessary because there's a lot of well, it is an unkindness, right? It's just the fact that people are doing the best that they can with what they have, and a lot of people are giving up, right, and not believing that they can have those things, right? And they're just toughening up, right? Taking care of themselves. I can do it alone. I do it myself. It's all in that control, right? I agree with you. I agree with you, Andrew. I actually look at it as a strength. And when you apologize, it's a different feeling. I don't know if you agree with me, Andrew, on this one. But there's a different feeling to the forgiveness, right? There's that forgiveness that we do because we have to, it'll destroy us if we don't forgive. There's that forgiveness, right? That we give to somebody and say, oh, we forgive you, but I don't want to be a part of your life. There's that forgiveness, though, where you say, oh, I get it, right? I know where you came from. And you know what? Let's start over. Yes, it's going to right, it's not going to feel right for a little while. Right? It's those people where there's infidelity in the marriage, where there's a man and a wife and the husband cheats on his wife. Right? I do believe that you know, humans are given that instinct just like every other animal. People forget every other animal on this planet is looking to reproduce, right? Right. The grand poobah has said this is the desire to keep these creatures going, because if you don't have that desire to reproduce, we are going to go extinct 100%, right? But in that, I think we're demasculating men, is what I think we're doing, right? And moving into this age of Aquarius. right? You hear about it. Women are hearing about it, right? And they run in those realms and they go, okay, we're going to take it full hilt, right? Next thing you know, you're going to see men in leather chokers with studs, with right on a chain, totally slaved out because right they're denying those urges, those animal urges, those human urges that were specifically put into them, right, to keep this world going so we don't become extinct. But apologizing, right, apologizing to somebody genuinely, I've done it, right, I've hurt people. And I can't help myself. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't get that opportunity, right? There are times when I've hurt people and I never got that opportunity to say I'm sorry, right? I remember telling the sweetest lady just because I heard somebody else say it and I thought it was cool. And the phrase was, "You had the personality of a maggot." And I tried that phrase out. I couldn't wait to try it out on somebody who even got close to meeting those standards. And I used it and I used it against somebody and I hurt her. Now, of course, we made up and everything, right? But I never did apologize to her for that. And I knew in the moment that it was hurtful to her, detrimental, maybe even, maybe stopped her from having a voice. And I never got that opportunity to apologize to her. And it was a silly thing that I did. And I only did it because I thought it was funny. I thought it was witty when I heard it. And I wanted to try it out. It's like when you hear a new word, right? You never heard it before. And you go, oh, today I'm going to use that word. And I did that, right? And that hurt somebody. She never said it hurt her. But I knew in the moment when I said it that it did, right? Or I wouldn't have tried so hard to find the perfect moment. I would have used it on anybody, right? Okay. Yeah. So to tie up this word, respect and honor. So in respect and honor of being the first word, I think it's opening up the can of worms on the kind of topic that I'm going to be bringing to the table, right? So if you're going to be hanging out with me, we're going to be do some healing, but the idea is to do it in baby steps, to do it in a way where it's not painful, right? Now we brought some things to the surface and going about your day, some of these memories of your childhood, right? And these parental missteps, right? And the lacking of the lessons, right? And they're not moving forward in their evolution. And some people, right, they won't do it. How can you expect one of those Tibetan monks that have for maybe centuries and centuries to sit on the top of a mountain and all he does is sit up on a mountain and he does his meditation. That's all he does. And praise to God that he's done that lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And then all of a sudden, he says, okay, we're going to do some good light shining. We're just going to go shine on New York City. So the next time around, I'm going to go born to this couple in the Bronx. Can you imagine going from that to that in just one jump? You can't do that and keep all those wires untangled. Like that would be a crash landing 100%, and you would have to be some type of right master yogi Tibetan monk in order to be able to handle something like that. Oh, that's a good way to look at it, Andrew. I really like that. My parents used to say all the time, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say anything at all, right? You don't say anything at all. But the thing is, it's in that guidance and this, I guess, in this idea now that I have that it's in the evidence, just like my father, right, had to be the evidence for me, My dad never gave me any lessons. And if he gave me those lessons, I don't remember any of them, right? We had deep conversations. We lived by my father's quotes. But for the most part, in his own self reflection, right? It was in that evidence of his life that I recognized when I bumped into it, right? And it was through the evidence that I learned and why I'm here right now, why I even started picking up any of the lessons, right? None of this 10 years ago would have made any sense to me at all. I'm such a realist. None of it would have, right? I'm non-denominational. I'm not even a religious person. I'm not even really a spiritual person. My only idea is that there are parts of me that are coming back lifetime after lifetime. Well, there's more than that, but that's right. That's the gist of it. And in creating the best human being, I think we're supposed to be that vessel for those parts of us, right? That if they came in right now, would just turn to mush with how polluted we are, right? In our ignorance, right? And ignorance is no excuse. So we have to put in the work, and that work comes from the choices we make. And that change happens, and then we have to ride those waves and just trust that those lessons, those right words will come into our lives when they're meant to come into our lives, when we're meant to play with that topic, that adventure, that experience. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer for today. Andrew, that was so nice of you to pop into my live show today. I wasn't expecting to see you. You're not working this morning. That was really sweet of you. And thank you for your thoughts on those topics. And this is my show, What's My Good Cheer? And I've spoken about this show that I've been doing on Instagram for years now. I've just brought it over to my YouTube channel. But because Andrew, I have a live show here on YouTube on Sunday nights, Chatters Live, and he's one of my moderators over there. Right? It was kind of sweet that he popped in here. All of you guys popping in to see me, it was really sweet. Melvin too, right? What a nice guy. You're both really really nice guys. But welcome to the topic I like to bring to the table. But it's very helpful, right? They call it shadow work, right? They call it self-healing, self-help, right? It's psychology, and psychology is not something you can do with a degree. It isn't. It's something that's in our own reflection because nobody understands us like us. Nobody has had those experiences. Nobody's had those conversations, right? And so, being highly sensitive and being empathic, we don't normally go off looking for the help, do we? We don't. We don't ask those questions. Been programmed not to ask. We've been programmed that way, right? We're here to do as we're told, right? Not to have a say. And that's unfortunate, but that's right. That's our fault, right? For not having that lesson to avoid that pitfall, right? I fell into that, and I hope, right, and I expect, and I am optimistic that having that lesson now that won't happen ever again, right? Right? That we all get to make those choices, right? And it's my willingness to try because I know I'm at fault for that because those were my choices. And not only do I feel they were my choices, I do think to some degree I was cahoots in that too. That I am without uh, guilt in how I treated myself, right? That I am grateful that some of those addictions allowed me to get to this point anyway, that it could have been a much different story. But I am grateful to be here in any case, and I'm grateful to share the journey. And I hope you guys get something out of it. And then I can hope that moving forward, that I could be that evidence that it's not too hard, that you can jump in. Sometimes it's just a conversation, sometimes it's an interaction, sometimes it's an adventure, sometimes, right? It's just an experience. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. We'll see each other tomorrow. Have a great day.